Welcome to the lazyfluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Miami.
And the topic of the day is belief. Before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and or drop a review on whatever platform you're listening on. And with that out of the way, belief. It's probably the day after Christmas, but since currently the day we are filming is the morning of Christmas, Merry Christmas and other happy holidays to those who celebrate them. And yeah, we'll be missing a New Year's, I think. I mean, we'll be doing an episode, but it'll be after New Year's. So Happy New Year's? Is that what you say?
Happy New Year.
Or is there like a Japanese expression for shogatsu specifically? Akemashite omedetou whenever that happens.
あれ、なんだ正月1月1日の前だったら良いお年を。
Okay, so 良いお年を。And we are talking about but I'm not sure what we decided to be the title of this episode, but we're talking about belief and religion because it is Christmas, and something about Christmas that I always find interesting is although it originated as, I don't know about originated, maybe there's a whole separate story, but as I understand it, it is a Catholic religion, and but anywhere around the world, it's very common to celebrate religion, even if you're not religious. I actually have a Jewish friend who celebrates Christmas, which I find is funny as well. So he both celebrates Hanukkah and Christmas, despite obviously there being a lot of, I'm not sure how much you know about the relationship between like Judaism and Christianity, but they're not friends. But despite that, he still celebrates Christmas. And so this got me to thinking, because I talked about one of my friends asking me this before, which is, do Japanese people, are they religious? Do they believe in God? And this question is not actually, the answer to it is not straightforward. And so we actually have a lot of different information, both like survey data and other stuff, as well as our own personal opinions, to help you guys form an image as to what belief looks like in Japan.
まあなんかこれさ、似たようなエピソードなんか忘れたけど、やったよね。ホリデーの。
Yeah, I'm not sure if we talked about it directly, but I think it's called Japanese holidays are crazy or something like that. It's our worst performing episode. I think our title sucked or something, thumbnail sucked, whatever. There's probably some discussion about holidays in that episode, but this is more specifically focused on belief, as opposed to how a given holiday is celebrated. So I'm not sure if you want to read some of the information. We have some information in Japanese, information in English, and the reason we do is, as you'll notice, there are very different results depending on how you ask a question about belief and whether it's self-reported information or it's reported by someone else. Do you want to read? This is an NHK report. Do you know if it's 2022 or?
多分最近だと思うけど、22なのかわからないけど、まあその質問で宗教何か信じてますかとかいうアンケートの回答に対して、で仏教って答えた人が 31%、神道
Yeah, Shinto.
で、答えた人 3%、キリスト教、Christian、が、1%で、何も信仰していないっていう、まあ、無宗教って答えた人が、62%。まあだからすなわちその仏教とか神道とかキリスト教って答えた人がまあ 36% で、無宗教っていう人が、62% だから、マジョリティは無宗教って答えてる。はい。
Yeah, but there are also other surveys, or I guess outside, not surveys, but descriptions. I'm not sure how they would even classify them if they're not asking them directly, but whatever. Categorizations of Japan's like religious, what's it called, demographic. And this is according to, what is it? The Religion Yearbook by the Agency for Cultural Affairs in Japan, and there are many other ones. And they categorized 48.5% of the population as Shinto, 46.3% as Buddhist, 1% Christian, and 4% various other religions. And the funny thing about this total count is this is about 1.5 times the total population of Japan. And this is because other categorizations categorize Japanese people as being both Shinto and Buddhist.
重なるってことか。
Yeah, so somehow, so like when I learned, I think in Genki or Genki 2 or something, which is a Japanese educational book for beginner, like intro Japanese. It says like 80% plus or something like that is Buddhist and Shinto or whatever. And so here you can see there are very conflicting things. We have one, this is from NHK, saying self-reported over half by a lot, like 62+% says they're not religious. But when being ascribed religion from various other sources, you can get all the way up to 80% of people are religious or whatever. So what's going on here? This is where maybe I have my opinions on this or whatever. But I think the first topic we should constitute is belief. Belief is a tricky subject, and being a religious is also can be confusing as well. So one of the factors that's discussed in this article that I'm reading that has multiple, it has the self-survey information that IME read previously as well, is that organizations, when they're ascribing belief sometimes for Christianity, it might require them to be baptized or something, which is different from a self-report, which is what you identify as religious. But then there's obviously the notion of being religious and that being separate from believing in God specifically. Is there anything you wanted to touch on before I discuss belief, or at least my take on kind of how belief works in Japan?
というと
I mean, you're okay. What do you believe belief means in terms of believing in God? If I asked you, do you believe in God? How do you frame that perspective? Like, what do you think I mean?
わかった。神がいるかどうかでしょ。私の意見。
Okay, so you believe I'm asking you whether a God exists.
それはわかんない。それね、なんか宇宙人がいるかどうかと同じだと思うから、私はもし神様を実際に見たら信じるかもしれないし、もうなんかだから考えてすらない。
Okay, and so do you so do you think this is if you were to ask, because you have a little more Western influence than I believe the average Japanese person, do you think they would interpret the question this similar way to how you're interpreting it? Do you believe in God? If I ask, do you believe in God? Do you believe that another Japanese person would ask in the same way? So you're saying, I'm asking a literal question saying, do you believe there is a God? Like, question mark.
Average people がなんだろう、質問に答えるときには、多分その質問を何かの宗教を持ってますかっていうのと、まあ、nearly equal かもしれない。
Okay. So what I would say, at least from perspective as American, is the notion of believing in God. Obviously, there's a notion, do you believe a God or some sort of God exists, is part of that. But there's a much larger portion is if you say you believe in God, there's a associated form of practice or like worship associated with that as well. And it obviously in the US or America, when you say, do you believe in God? There's not multiple, you're not really framing it as Shinto. For example, Shinto has multiple deity, or it's hard to describe the word spirits, I guess you could say, that have power. I don't know if God is the right word, that control multiple different realms. Like isn't there one for the toilet or something? There's one for like studying, like a Shinto, do you know what I'm talking about? Like different Shinto gods and different shrines that people go to study or...
なんだっけ、弁天だっけ。まあなんか勉強の神様とか、お金の神様とか、まあいろんなね、その健康の神様とかあるのかな。いろんなものに神様がいて、で、そこのなんか神社でお祈りするっていうのが定番。
Yeah. But so, for example, for Shinto, do you believe that Japanese people who are like maybe categorized as Shinto, or you yourself, believe these gods exist or these deities exist? Or do you believe that it's like a form of, because how I see it is as an outsider, but who's done a fairly decent amount of study about this as obviously personal experience as well, is that belief in the way you ask the question, at least from American perspective, is asking for not only the literal belief that you think a God exists, but also your actions towards it are intentful and like in almost a form of worship towards that God in a true sense that you're actually, I don't know, a follower or something of that. Whereas when I hear, for example, somebody Shinto or the religion of Shinto, I think is more akin to like almost Greek gods, where Do you know the Greek like Zeus or Poseidon?
ゼウスとかね。
Yeah, where I mean, at least from a modern day perspective, where a lot of people know about them and they think they're really cool. But and maybe even if they existed nowadays, I mean, if they're like, I don't know if in Greek or like anywhere they actually have practices that they do or customs. But I kind of see Japan more as like if you imagine the Greek gods, which you understand, and just imagine that people have had culture, like stuff that's related to them that they kind of do out of a form of habit. But in my perspective, they don't actually believe in these gods that they actually, like for example, the god of study, whatever, or the god of toilets or whatever. I don't think the average Japanese person actually, or maybe even thinks about it really, that this is something that actually exists. It's more of a form of things that they've done because their parents have done them with them.
そうそう、なんか、なんていうの、私の、まあ、個人的な意見としては、まあ、なんていうんだろう。その、お勉強の神様とかいるけど、それを信じてるわけじゃなくて、みんながやってて、で、まあ、parents とかがやってて、まあ、そう教えられたり、祈るといいことがあるよって言われるからやるわけであって、必ずしも、信じているっていうわけではない。だから私も小さい頃とかよく受験エントランスエグザムとかのなんかお祈りをするために神社に行ってどうか合格しますようにとかはしたことあるから、でもだからといって本当に勉強の神様がいるとは、まあ、その時信じたかどうかは分からないけどなんだろう、いるからするってわけじゃなくてした方がいいよみたいな感じだったからやったわけ。
Yeah. And we recently went to Fushimi Inari, which is or I guess one distinction I should make, just because for those who aren't sure, because Shinto and Buddhism can seem, and they are classified as something like overlapping in Japan in terms of people's like practices. The reason they tend to be classified, a lot of Japanese people, as both is because they do customs in culture that technically are related to them. You know what I'm saying? Like going to temples and shrines technically has a relationship to religion in terms of historical perspective. But in terms of the believers there, like I said, 62%, at least of, I think the thing I was looking at was the Culture Affairs of 2022, just straight up say, no, they don't have any religious belief. But I would be betting that way more than 60% of people go like on Hatsumode or just like, what, for example, we went to Fushimi Inari and one of my friends from Japan, who's not religious at all, was just encouraging me. He's like, hey, this is what you can like pray for or whatever at Fushimi or wish for at Fushimi Inari, and you can like put a coin in, and it's basically whatever. Yeah, like a monetary donation, I guess. And so I think those are more directly go into helping the temple, right? As opposed to
お寺がまあ活動するための資金になると。
Yeah, and the interesting thing that I want to mention is a lot of these. So what Ayumi was saying about it's something that you should just do because you believe you should. I mean, it's just something you're accustomed to doing. What I find interesting is a lot of these. I don't even call them. I guess they are temples. So you have temples which are considered to be Buddhist, generally speaking. A lot of temples because and you have shrines which are dedicated to some sort of deity or something like that. And so Shinto is shrine, Buddhist is temple. But there's also a weird ambiguous zone where you have temple-like structures or very big. For example, I was thinking of Heianji in
平安神宮。
神宮, yeah, Heian Jingu.
あれは昔のすごい昔のなんていうシリっていうかなんていう
Yeah, well, I think Jingu is like considered like an imperial palace or something of that extent. But the thing is, in terms of like how they look, like a lot of these like the Heian Jingu or stuff like that, it has it almost looks like a mixture between a temple and or a shrine, and they have the saisen as well for monetary donations. But the thing is, you're not actually, there's no direct god associated, unless you want to go historically speaking, and maybe the emperor of Japan or something, and you're praying to them. But something I found interesting when we were walking there is a lot of older people, which I mean, I would guess if it gives an age breakdown, the people who are saying they're Buddhist tend to be older, because there are actual practicing Buddhists. We'll get into that separate thing. There are actual practicing Buddhists, but for a lot of the temples, it's I think more of almost a meditative thing where they go and they feel like they have to do, because when you're going to Heian Jingu, unless you're literally praying to like the emperor or Japan itself, there isn't an immediate god or deity even.
なんかそもそもなんかちょっと一般論になっちゃうんだけど、宗教を信じるっていう行為はさ、心の安定のためだと思うんだよ。
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole like larger discussion, but I definitely believe that's a big part of
そう
religion.
だからその人まあなんていうのそのどれぐらいの割合の人がこう考えてるかわからないけど、ただ彼らはゴッドを信じるじゃなくて、そのなんていうんだろう、メディテーションみたいな感じでそのお寺に行ったりとかしてる人もいるかもしれない。
Yeah, I think that's also why there's a distinction with the definitions that we talked about before with people surveys and outside categorization is belief can be like distinguished between an active thing that you, if asked, you know what I'm saying, you say that you're doing something. Let's say like, for example, if we separate from religion and I ask you, what's your personality or something? I ask like, are you a trustworthy person? And then you say yes. But your actions over the last 10 years, whatever, you've stolen my, let's say, hypothetically, you've stolen my bike 10 times. I borrowed you my car. You threw it off a bridge and sold it or something. Or, you know what I'm saying? And from my perspective, no, you're not a trustworthy person. But I asked you and say, are you a trustworthy person? And you say, yes, I'm a trustworthy person. And I feel here's where you can get one of the differences with belief.
自覚があるかどうかだよね。
Yeah.
そうそう。
Well, more, not, yeah, it's also like, depending on how you want to define it, I could define trustworthy people are their actions determine their trustworthiness, not their spoken word. So same thing with religion. I feel with categorization, maybe a lot of outside groups, I mean, not maybe, a lot of outside groups and maybe American or other stuff that I think identify religion in Japan, I mean, for one, I don't think any of them speak Japanese or really have had experience talking to people about it, but personally speaking, because I think it's a little too far-fetched to call them religious, at least from my American perspective. But they see them doing the Hatsumode, they see them going to temples, and like, boom, that is what God is that? Oh, that's a shrine. They're Shinto. Oh, they're going to a Buddhist thing too? That's weird. I guess they're Shinto and Buddhist.
でもこれさ、思ったけど、イベントとして考えてるから、例えば You're American でしょ、アメリカ人だけどお寺行ったりとか、まあ、神社行ったりとかして、まあみんなが祈ってるから一緒にやるみたいな感じじゃん。
Are you talking about, is that a thing in America? Or have I done it?
だから別に信じてるわけじゃないけど、日本人のみんながやってるからお寺行ったり、まあ、神社行ってお祈りするじゃん。
Yeah.
それと一緒なんだと思う、日本人の多くの人は。イベントとしてみんながやってるからこういうのがあって、まあ、日本の文化として。で、みんながやってるように、じゃあなんか1年のうちでこの時期にやるからやりましょう。
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's right, but I think it's also interesting. It's like Hatsumode specifically. It's something that you start your year off like going to. Is it a shrine specifically that you start Hatsumode off?
いや、どっちもあると思う。
Okay, you can do either one. And like if I'm in, for example, I mean, maybe it would, but it would be strange to be invited for me to celebrate Hanukkah with a family or one day of Hanukkah. But it's not weird at all, for example, for me to do Hatsumode. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like that's a very good distinction there. Obviously, a lot of this has to do with the definitions of the given groups, and it depends on the given believer or not about what they consider the bar for being religious. For example, in America, there's a lot of people who were raised Catholic or Christian or whatever, some faith, and they're adults, they don't go to church, they don't practice anything, they don't read the Bible, whatever, but they have an upbringing, and therefore they feel like they are enough like Christian or whatever to self-identify. But it's funny. And then in the opposite in Japan, you can have no, when asked directly, they say no, but, they probably don't have any like sense of, maybe another distinction is they don't have any sense of rules or morality expressly tied with their customs and actions, but they do go to all the events and things like that. Or if that makes any sense. Like there's a general idea with like the 10 Commandments. In Christian, have you heard of that before? The 10 Commandments, which is like a stone tablet that has like the 10 rules or commands from God.
あ、知ってる。
Yeah.
知ってる。あ、どう忘れした。
So that's like another set of what it might be in belief, which is maybe you don't believe in the God necessarily, or maybe directly in the same way, and you don't perform the actions. This is something I think applies to a lot of Americans, but you have some sort of sense of belief that the laws themselves are important to some extent. Like I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I mean, there's like basically don't don't do unto others what you want to be done to yourself or whatever in a more fancy way, which is basically like, and then there's basically it's like don't steal from your neighbors or something like that. And it just
個人の信念でなんか宗教に関係なくその考えがいいと思ったらそれに従うしって感じじゃない？
yeah, but a lot of these people, I mean, especially if they bring up the Ten Commandments as a thing that everyone should abide by, were raised religious. But I'm saying, but as adults, it's very common for none of these types of people to go to church or anything like that. Obviously, the commitment to go to church, I would say, just as a defense, is much higher than the commitment to go to a temple for 3 seconds or whatever and do double clap, double bow, clap. What is it? Hold up. Double clap, double bow, clap,
私もよく
bow.
分かってないんだよね
I can't remember.
お辞儀2回2回拍手お辞儀1回かな
Okay,
2杯
okay.
2拍拍っていうのかなトゥントゥントゥントゥントゥンかな
Yeah, okay. So was it 2 bow, 2 claps,
1 bow
1 bow? That's it?
多分、まあ、
Okay.
ところによって違うけど
Yeah, and what I was saying is like that's a lot faster than having to attend. For example, I so in my situation, my religious situation, just because I feel it's very relevant to the episode, half of my family is religious, and the other like half is like atheist, and so because of that, I've gotten a mix and sprinkling of the like or at least specifically the Catholic side of what it's like going to like having been forced to go to church. I'm not religious for clarification, but the having to go like it's like an hour long event, and you have to sit in like a what is it called? There's a word for it. Well, it's like a wooden bench sort of thing, and then you have to kneel. At least for the church I went to. And you listen to a guy talk about basically all the best hits from the Bible. Like
ああ分かった多分
yeah.
日本人がなんで無宗教かっていうとそのさっき言ってたように神道とかのそういう宗教っぽい動作が簡単だからなんか宗教としてなんていうの頭の中で処理してないんじゃない？もうただの動作でそれが宗教の一部だと考えてないからまあ無宗教みたいな。
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that's kind of what I was talking about in how I believe belief is understood, or I should say is a way to define belief that I believe everybody or most people would agree with because for example, saying that you just go to church once a year, but you don't believe in God or whatever would be a weird thing that I think classifies you believing in God. Or I think obviously you believing one exists is can make you just a believer or something, but it'd be different from being somebody who's like worshiping God or a specific God in general. And so from my perspective, it's like to fully classify somebody, there is a intent from the person, and there are their actions, and then there's also an understanding of what they are doing with like intent. So they are going to a church with the idea of worshiping a God for whatever reason. And they also believe that God exists, and maybe some other tenets associated with that. And by that definition, of the vast majority, even some of the people who probably identify as Buddhists in these surveys, I don't think would fall into in Japan, because I think a lot of portion of that the Buddhism is also just repeated habit from like I've had people, or I've known other older Japanese people. Who they do a lot of the meditation, and I've asked them about that, and they're like, well, it helps me calm down. That's pretty much it, and they do it. And they'll even do like the whole, we were able to walk into, I can't remember what shrine, but they were doing like Buddhist chants, like Amida.
Namu Amida Butsu.
Yeah, Nami Abuda.
Namu Amida Butsu.
Okay. And obviously the people doing the chants, I definitely feel have a very deep maybe understanding of Buddhism and their religion, at least the Japanese variety, or one of the Japanese varieties. It's a whole other topic. Or do you something you want to say?
そう今なんだアーティコを読んでたんだけど、日本人は無宗教だけど無神論ではない。だからなんていうの？
Oh yeah, as in they have. Well, I mean, what would you saying it? So they're not religious, but they are not
無神論者。
they're not necessarily not. It's not they don't believe in anything. I guess you should say, or they're spiritual. Is that what you want to say? When they're not inherently. It's not that they're not spiritual, but they are not believers. Or if that makes sense. Is that what you're trying to say?
なんだっけなんとかっていう。
Of religious versus spiritual? Is that what you're trying to say? Agnostic?
わかんない。なんか無神論者って英語でなんて言うんだっ
け？atheist.
そうそう。atheist ではない。religious じゃないけど、atheist ではない。
Yeah, I think I would say saying they're spiritual but not religious is probably a good way to say it.
だから、
yeah, go ahead.
質問で何かの宗教を信じてますかって聞かれたら No。だけど、神を信じますか？なんて言うんだろう。まあその聞き方もちょっと宗教って捉えられる。
I think if you probably asked, do you believe there are greater powers or forces outside that we understand?
そういう質問をすれば、まあ、何か信じてるっていう答える人はもうちょっと多くなると。聞き方だよね。
Yeah, yeah. But I'm saying that distinction between those two, like I said, I don't believe just saying that would get a firm believer in Christianity to acknowledge your belief, if that makes sense. They'd be like, "What? You're not doing anything, though. You can't claim you're a believer of any sense." But no, I definitely think that's true. I don't know. I wonder if they ask I'd be very interested to know if they ask the youth that question, though. I'm not confident that the youth would even say they're spiritual. I'm very confident or pretty confident the older generations would, but I would hesitate to even say that the young now would even say they're spiritual. They probably just haven't even thought about it, if is my honest opinion.
なんか普通にも私の意見では普通のアベレージの人はもうイベントとしてそういうなんていうんだろう宗教的な習慣を捉えてて、もうクリスマス祝うし、ハロウィーンとかバレンタインとか、あとなんだイースターとか。
ね、Wait, Easter? I forgot. Yeah, Easter is.
ディズニーランドでもイースターっていうもうイベントだからもう。そう。
That's farther than most countries. I'm surprised you guys don't do Thanksgiving at this point.
Thanksgiving?
Easter, I'm saying Easter is very religious. Like Easter, that one's not celebrated in other countries as much, I don't think. That's like 1 to 1 if you're a Christian, you're celebrating Easter or something.
ただ単に日本のディズニーランドだとイースターはエッグでラビットとかキヨコとかが可愛いグッズがあるからみんな行くみたいな感じだから全然リリジュスじゃない。
Yeah, but hopefully this is giving you a better idea of how religion is perceived and what belief is like in Japan, and also, yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and or a good time. I very much like Christmas. Mainly the food's awesome. Presents are great. I don't recommend Christmas in Japan unless you want KFC or you're going on a date with somebody or something, because they have that's how their Christmas is celebrated. But
とりあえずチキン食べてればいいらしい。
Yeah. Oh, also, just so everybody knows, Family Mart is the second most popular chicken in Japan.
2番目に美味しいチキンはファミリー2番目に人気か。
Yeah, the second most popular chicken in Japan is Family Mart.
ファミマのファミチキらしい。
Yeah, they advertise that on their own stores. It's been all over Japan. They want you to know they're second. They're not the best. They're second most popular.
結構日本そういうのやるんだよ。なんか2番目に美味しいメロンパン屋さんとか。
Yeah, I've never seen that sort of humbleness in American advertising. Like every movie is the best movie of the year. But yeah, anyways, yeah, hope you enjoyed that. 戻りました。
We are back.
今週たくさん歩きました。
Yes. So actually we went to Kyoto for 5 days? 6 days?
まあ1週間ぐらい。
Yeah.
で、どのぐらい歩いたかというと。
So like on average, I guess, so one day we walked like 30 kilometers, which is in miles.
わかんない。20以上のマイル
Yeah, probably.
かな。
Yeah.
で、毎日はそういうような感じだったので、まあ気づいたことはあった。その散歩頻度によって、まあ例えば私が一人の友達がいて、その伏見なりと一緒に行った友達なんだけど、その人がめっちゃ安いじゃなくて痩せてる。で、わかる？
Yeah.
うん。で、なぜこの人の体重について話してるかというと、まあ、ハイキングしてた時に誰もいなかった。私とアイミだけだった。それで、なぜ、なんかアメリカだったら、 まあこの金曜日に、まあ金曜日だと思うんだけど、その金曜日の時になんかみんなハイキングしたくなると思って、それでこんなようなすごくいいハイキングのところは絶対人気だと思ったから、なんで他の人がいないかと思って。
And it was at night, like late, at like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. So that's why there were.
いやいや、その他の山に関する話。
Right. We went to, we climbed a mountain.
うん、そう。
Yeah.
でもとりあえず、そのような時はいつも私が思うのは、なんかアメリカ人はまあ結構太ってるんだけど、なぜ太ってるかというと、それは自分の、なんていうか、一日生活、なんていうか、ただレイジーではなく、その食べ物とか、車の生活がすごくダメだから、歩く機会がないと思ってたから。
Yeah, so in Japan, it's like designed to walk. Like,
そう。
Yeah. Either to go to work, to go to school.
で、友達の場合は、運動したことが多分5年間、6年間の中ではやったことないと思う。1回しか。1回さえ。でも、結構痩せてる。でもちろん、なんかメタボリズムも影響あると思うんだけど、代謝というんですか。
代謝が、なんていうの？
低い？高い？でもそれもあると思うんだけど、ほとんどの人の場合は、まあ食料はそんなにもなんかみんなの一日の生活の日常生活の食べ物はそんなに体に悪くないと一応思うんだけど、同時に仕事とかのために毎日40分とか歩かなくちゃいけないってこともある。日本の生活に関しては。もちろんみんな電車に乗らなくちゃいけないので、その自分の家から電車までの駅とかはまあ10分とか20分。それで帰りも10分とか20分。それで毎日40分とか歩かなくちゃいけない。で、もちろんそれは運動。でもその人が、まあ私は運動してるとは思わない。でもアメリカの場合だと、その仕事があるときに、ただ車に入って、まあ仕事まで行って、多分8時間ぐらい座って、車に戻って自分の家に戻るのが一般的だと思う。
Yeah. So, like, but in Japan, I guess, like, in terms of food, it's kind of expensive to be healthier, right?
そう。
Yeah.
それがなぜこのトピックについて話しているかというと、アメリカでは実はほとんどの、まあ、健康的な選択肢とか食べ物はそんなに高くない。
Yeah, like
果物とか野菜とか。
Yeah, fruits, it's, they are sold in, like, bags. Right?
なんか大きな袋で売られてる、アメリカでは。
Yeah. But in Japan, so for example, for apples, we can buy apples for, how do I say, like each apple.
Per apple.
Yeah, per apple. So
200円、まあ、以上。
Yeah, it's more than 200 yen.
で、多分5年前だとそれは、まあ、多分2年前だとそれなんか$2 per apple? Per apple, not bag. Apple.
Yeah.
$2 とか。でも野菜も結構高い。
Yeah, right.
でももちろんご飯はそんなに健康的じゃないでしょ。普通の日本のご飯。
白米。
白米、そう。でもなんていうか、多分他のアメリカ人がいやなんか日本ではみんなすごく健康的な人生をなんか、まあ、日常生活があるから太ってないと、ただメタボリズムとか何でしたっけ、代謝が高いから太ってないと思う。まあそれもあるんだけど、同時にそのただのなんていうか、その日本人はなんかアメリカ人と同じようなレイジーなんていうか意識、なんていうか運動したくないと思ってる。なんか例えばそう。まあだと思うけど、もちろん電車に乗らなくちゃいけないから、とりあえずやりたくなくても
やらざるを得ない。
そう。でも例えばその女性の話、その前多分昨日その女性の運動の話覚えてるの？そのなんか女性はできれば一度も運動したくない。なんか人生。
Right. High school.
そう。
Yeah. So like, so when I entered junior high school, middle school, yeah, like, so for average girl, so they don't want to go outside and play. But like I was used to go outside and play soccer with boys, so I was surprised at how lazy Japanese girls are.
うん。
Yeah,
でも高校だけじゃないと思うんだけど、まあ友達の悪口しないけど、なんかあいみの友達の中ではみんな運動しないでしょ。
Yeah. So when I was playing with boys, because I was how do I say, active and energetic, so I had to play with boys, not with girls. And so the girls said that I was, how do I say, kobio.
You're trying to seduce the other
kind of,
men.
Yeah. So no, I was not trying to do that. I was just trying to be energetic or something.
でも大学でもあいみは唯一の運動してる人でしょ。
So I like outdoor stuff, but like I guess none of my friends and none of my female friends like that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's hard to find active girls here.
そう一応アメリカ人は結構レイジーだと思うんだけど、私のせいではないと言ってるだけ。で、日本人もアメリカに住んでたらまあもちろんその大使以外のことにそう大社いつもなんかちょっと忘れにくいんだけど、その大社に関してはもちろん日本のなんか生物的にその利益があると思うんだけど、同時に太ると思う。なんかアメリカに行ったらその普通のアメリカの生活は結構太りやすいだと思うので。
Because like fast food, it's much cheaper in America, right?
But
in Japan, like even for McDonald's, yeah, it is kind of
like 800円。
Yeah, if you order like combo, a meal.
So
Yeah. So it's not that cheap in Japan. So that's one of the reasons why Americans are kind of overweight.
でも高いものなんか自分が思う、アメリカ人としてのファストフードを思うと最初に出てくるのは多分なんかハンバーガーとかでしょ。
Right.
で、パンとバーガーは実は日本のものではない。それでビーフとかは結構日本で高い。ということはそのファストフードはマクドナルドは存在するんだけど、ファストフードではない。実はちょっとなんていうか高級な食べ物として見られてる。
Right. So in Japan, you can't get like 100% beef at supermarket. So it's either pork or a combination of pork and beef mixture. So it is hard to get the 100%.
で、見つけたらすごく高い。
Yeah, really expensive. Like this size, which is like 500 yen for 100% beef.
ということは、アメリカのようなファストフードの店は、レストランとかは存在できない。その高いから、そのバーガーとかは。で、じゃがいもも普通のじゃがいもはそんなに、何でしたっけ、なんかさつまいもの方が多いからでしょ、その日本の中では。みんなその店の中、そのいつもなんか最初に出てくるのはなんかさつまいものスタンド。
It's for 焼き芋。
焼き芋だけ。
We both have じゃがいも and sweet potatoes. Potatoes and sweet potatoes.
とりあえずビーフは完全に高いで。
Yeah.
それでなんか。
nuts.
そうなんか微妙にナッツとか結構高い。その小さい見えないけど多分手ぐらいの袋に関しては多分500円かかると思う。でこの袋は全然なんていうか太くない。ただなんか何でしたっけ、工夫されてるというか。
There's air in the bag.
なんか sealed。
そう。真空パック、right?
その真空パックのピーナッツはなんか800円でよく見る。で小さい感じの。
So what I want to say here is it is hard to get like healthier food in Japan.
ナッツ、果物、野菜。肉はそんなに健康的じゃないかもしれないけど、とりあえず、
expensive.
そうで、それだけ言いたかった。そのアメリカ人のせいでもあるけど 100% ただアメリカ人はレイジーだとは限らないってこと。
If you guys exercise a lot, then you guys can be healthier.
そのアメリカは両方のなんていうか その
二極端だよ
そう
ね。
二極端
It's
その
either thin or it, how do I say it? Really thin or really fat.
う
Right?
ん、まあ thin というかその athletic
Yeah, athletic.
そのなんかオリンピックの人とかその
Yeah.
よく山登りとかそういうような人は
Mhm.
結構すごいアメリカでは、
Mhm.
まあマラソンの人もそのなんか200マイルのマラソンの人もしてる人もいるんですが、その逆にその800パウンド以上とか1000パウンドを超えてると
I
い
don't
う
understand pounds,
まあ
but-
多分500キロ以上い
500
や本当にその人は存在している
あ
アメリカでは同時にでそれでちょっとなんていうか極端すぎるの国
ー
アメリカはまあそれだけ今週が思ったこと。Welcome back to the final section. And if you've made it to the final section, make sure to send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com, dropping a question, language related and or otherwise. And this week we have a new commenter, Kurt Lee, and with a quick funny aside as to our discussion about honesty last week. Kurt Lee says, I heard Japanese girls treat dating like a job. I've confessed to a Japanese person before, only to receive an indirect response. I had no clue where I stood with her. The first time we had an argument, she blocked and ghosted me. I'm not sure if this has to do with honesty, but the indirectness I think we've talked about before, which is like the not just tatemae, just straight up to not wanting to have any sort of conflict and avoiding conflict resolution, which maybe you could interpret as honesty. But I think this is pretty common, right? The blocking, ghosting.
I mean なんで英語で喋ってたの多分これさシチュエーションにもよるよ。例えばさこれがさデイティングアップだったらよくあり得ることじゃない？
Yeah, I have
だけど
heard.
これがもしその同じ職場であったり同じ学校であったらなかなかないと思うよ。
Well, that's because you can't block them.
なんで
You're
ブロック
gonna
で
be
きるよ。
no, you can, but then they're in person. They'll see you.
もう
like you
す
understand?
うんうんうん。
Or
する人は
especially on the
するかも。
job. Especially on the job. That I
Mm-mm.
feel like that'd be more difficult.
だからこれ多分デイリングアップとかそういうアップだと思うよ。
This conversation.
うん。
I
予
mean,
想は。
maybe. I mean, it's definitely happened. So even when I wasn't, I'm not sure I talked about this in our Tatemae conversation, but I've had Japanese friends who are women, and I did not see them in a romantic way at all. But especially I had a pretty good friend, or I thought it was a good friend, and then I just like messaged them and I was like, "Hey, are you down to catch up sometime?" And I think it was interpreted as I was hitting on them or something, or whatever. And then they just like they replied, "Oh yeah, cool, whatever, nice." Like, or no, they didn't say it. They said, "Nice to see you again," or whatever. And then they ghosted me, and I was just so confused but I think maybe there was a miscommunication there as well. So and that wasn't a dating app. This was like a friend I've had. Had for like 4 months when I was studying abroad in Japan.
日本だと男女1対1 right?
Yeah.
One in your case だと何？
Well, this was just texting.
I mean like you were trying to go
No, I was just trying to like to
yourself?
Zoom. No, just like to Zoom.
Zoom.
You know what I'm
まあ
saying?
Zoom でもまあハンギングアウトでも男と女一人一人1対1だとそれがなんか it's considered to be date なんだよ。よくわかんないけど。
Well, I didn't even get to that point in the conversation. it was like a pretty quick block, whatever.
でもそう考えられたんじゃない？
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
well,
I was
like-
pretty. I don't know. I thought I was pretty like good friends with the person. So to me, it came out of nowhere. But I don't know. I feel you, Curtly. I'm not sure what happened in your situation, but I personally think it's probably pretty common way of conflict resolution, just to not resolve a conflict. Although I will say it is, I think, getting more common across all cultures, especially in America, where ghosting. I've had friends who ghosted other people, and it just pisses me off. I'm like, bro, just be straightforward. I'm a part of the Don't Ghost squad. It's not helpful for the other person. It's not helpful for you as a form of conflict resolution. It's not like a good It's not a good problem-solving strategy. Postponing, postponing conflict resolution can lead to a bunch of other problems, like literal, like in your actual life problems, as well as it can lead to developing anxiety and other stuff, and which then affects you. So just avoid postponing conflict as a form of conflict resolution. Postponing action towards conflict as a conflict resolution strategy is a terrible one, in my personal opinion. Anyways, next question. From Oddity, it's me again. The issue of honesty seems to touch upon the difference between deontological and consequentialist ethics. To put it less pompously, what matters when you perform an action? Is it the agent's intent and the value of the action, as either unethical/unethical, or is it only the eventual result? The West leans more towards the intent matters approach, but it also assumes that although people realize the ethical significance of their actions, they'll still honestly do the unethical thing. At least the way that Japan has it, the agent can still choose how to act, albeit under lots of peer pressure. Which leads me to ask, how much of a big deal is peer pressure in Japan?
もうアロットで。peer pressure。ほぼ毎日が peer pressure。
Yeah, I mean, that's how I felt. I talked about it in the middle section of the last episode. But and it's getting, not now, ever since I pointed out, I think I'm even noticing it, where you know what, I might put some pictures of some of the signs that we've come across in the last week. Where this one I think was unusual, but it was so funny. It was in the middle of a hike, and there's a sign says, "If you litter, you have the brain of a crow," in Japanese.
なんだっけ、吸い殻ぽいぽい、脳みそはなんだっけ、カラスみたいな感じのやつ。
Yeah, and it was just hilarious. I was like, and it was in the middle of a hike, just out of nowhere. It's like nature. Bam! Here's a sign. Hey, fuck you.
It was like あれだよ、誰か一人のなんていうの、その government とかじゃなくて、個人のperson が書いたやつだと思う。怒り out of anger みたいな。
Yeah, and it's all. I mean, aside from that one that was very aggressive, most of it's very passive aggressive. They use keigo. This I find so interesting. It's all in keigo, like we're supposed to be addressing someone of higher status, i.e. the customer, but they're all demanding and enforcing action, which is very conflicting with keigo. And so I feel that's so weird. And everything's oyame kudasai. You'll see oyame kudasai so much in Japan about anything.
そうだね。例えばさ、マスクとかもみんながしてるから、もし協力してくれないならちょっと声をかけに行きますよとかさ。
Yeah, or like we took a overnight bus, and it's like, it should be like the person's like, thanks for taking our bus, and we're ready to help you. We just have a few requests. Obviously, it's not like Japanese keigo, and it's like, don't drink or eat anything that smells. Don't make any noise. Don't talk to anybody around you. Don't turn on your phone if it makes noise. Also, keep your phone and your brightness down low. Also, wear headphones so that you don't bother anybody in the thing. Don't lift the curtains up. Don't put your these are all things he said. Don't put your head behind the curtains. What else did we have? Don't lean your seat back too far. Don't have I missed anything? There's like, it was like thing after thing after thing after thing, and this is like all in keigo, but it's very passive aggressive. And so yeah, I definitely feel, even as a foreigner walking in, I'm like, God damn, guys, I get it. Jesus, I'm not. You're treating me like I'm like a criminal who's, I don't know, it's crazy.
でもそれ言わないとする人がいるんだよね。まあでも事実としてはめちゃめちゃ席を倒してくる人がいたんだよ。私の前の人が。
Yeah. I'm not saying all these things are wrong.
本当に annoying すぎて。
But I do disagree with some of them. My point is, there's also emphasis on saying it's a crime. I've noticed. Blank 犯罪です。
なんか、それはまた切符の払わないとなんか犯罪です。
Yeah, we had an incident where there was a Chinese family they came through a what's it called? A bus, like, no, they're not called terminals, whatever. Their whole family bought tickets, and they came through. One of the dad lost their ticket. Everybody else had them and went through. They came from somewhere else. And he was trying to explain that he paid the ticket already and lost it. And then he actually bought another ticket and lost that ticket. Very bad luck for this dad. But the reason it's like, believable, the rest of the family got through fine. And so they went there and back with tickets properly, which you can only do if you have a ticket because you can't enter. So he had to have bought a ticket to get through. And the family definitely had to buy a ticket as well. And he was only trying to say, hey, my ticket, I dropped it, whatever, everybody else can come through. But the person working there was, I mean, obviously Japanese, and from our opinion, seemed like he just didn't like Chinese people. And he was trying to be like, he was the most polite, passive-aggressive Japanese I've ever heard in my life. And we would, yeah.
声のトーンもなんかちょっと怒った感じで、まあ事情はわかりますけど、これを払っていただかないと、警察呼んで、逮捕することになってしまうんですよ、みたいな。
Yeah, for those listeners, it's saying like, like, I can understand your anger, but if you do not, for one, just being clear, there's no law dictating them to have to arrest them. A lot of the people who work the railroad, any of the stations, they have the authority to let people in, like in and out, depending on circumstance. They're given that, and it's happened to me before. Like, just to go to the bathroom, the person let me come in. Like, remember later on. So they're able to let people through. It's not like he didn't have the way to de-escalate the situation. But the guy was willing to call the cops over about $9. Which is like, and the other guy was being very reasonable. He was like I'm just explaining that.
その人は結局3回同じチケットを買うことになるんだよ。しかもあれ、まあ、$9だからさ、結構な額じゃん。
Yeah.
3000超えるよ。
I just think to him it just seemed like such a straightforward thing to fix, which it is. But to like the Japanese train work, like apparently that is his meaning in life, is to be to enforce the rules,
だか
especially.
らあれなんだよ。もう日本人はとにかくルールはルールだからダメみたいな。これもちょっと話したいんだけど、駅で私もうミドルセクションでも言ったけど、ずっと歩いてたから疲れて、でポータブルチェアを持ってたの。
Yeah.
それを出して駅のまあついてるところで広げて座ってたの。そしたらなんかもう1分とか2分後になんか駅員さんが来て、ここはなんだ、座り込みはルールかな、ダメですのでって言われて、あ、そうなんですねみたいな。でもさ、考えてみ、現実に論理的に考えてみればさ、椅子を出して座るのとさ、立って何時間もさ、そこにいるのってさ、スペース的には同じじゃん。なんでダメなのみたいな感じ。
Yeah, that's what I thought. And if you had crutches, for example, like I doubt they would get on you for leaning onto your crutches standing in like a train station, even though it takes up probably even more space horizontally because you have to offset your weight. But if you bring, and to be clear, this chair is like, we're sitting on them now. You can't even see them. They're literally just small thing. They're smaller than your butt, basically. Yeah. So it is taking up like the equivalent space to just sitting there leaning back on a wall or whatever. But the train conductor or wherever running the station, in my opinion, like there's no, maybe this might be a whole other thing, but I don't believe when we're talking about ethics, there's seem to be no notion or of interpretation of laws or understanding the intent of a law. The people who enforce them simply only understand the way to enforce it, and in any ambiguity, they will just lean towards enforcing the law, as opposed to maybe for example, sitting down in a train station could potentially, in some hypothetical, like if you were sprawled on the floor, slow traffic. But with it slowing traffic at like 9 p.m. in a train station that was mostly empty, when you're not taking up any more space than somebody sitting down? No. But is the train conductor or whatever the person working at the train station going to use their brain and consider this as an option? No. Same with the person in the train station. Is it more likely that a person paid their ticket, given that their entire family was able to enter and go through, and just the father just forgot and lost it as he's telling you? Or is it more likely that the father decided to pay for everyone's ticket except for their own after they already paid for the one going there? And they're just lying to you just to get a discount for one person who's the father of a family who has to have this embarrassing situation with a thing. No, but the person working there is like, I mean, realistically thinking, I think he's like, I don't like Chinese people, and so then he decided, okay, time to be an asshole today, but I have to use Kegel, so we're just gonna be a polite asshole.
Polite asshole.
Yeah. Anyways, the last thing I will say. Oh, go ahead.
めっちゃさ、オディティのさ、質問から離れちゃってない?
Yeah, no, I feel like whatever. This is the honesty. I mean, you can see the pressure from all example. Yeah, pressure is a big thing. But I will say, in terms of ethics, I didn't cover this in the topic because it's a very long comment. But there was a discussion she had about not seeing that this form of way of getting the thing done, being like consequenceless ethics. About, well, the outcome is fine, so it's equally valid or something. So I have two things I want to say about that, which is honesty, I think, is a separate discussion from ethics, because ethics is looking into, like, from, at least when you're talking about managing a country, is talking about, like, well, especially consequential ethics is focusing on the end result of something and then justifying that. Whereas honesty, at least the way I'm discussing it, is a intent aligning with action. In terms of honesty. So regardless of it being a better outcome and consequential with ethics, even arguably, it's still, to me, separate from the discussion of honesty. Now, if we're talking about which is a better system for organizing or like grouping, whatever. That's a whole separate conversation. But I would like to say is that it can be hard, especially when you're arguing consequentialist ethics, to justify them, because especially if you're trying to argue them in terms of consequence, because it can be very difficult to determine what the consequence of something was. For example, you can say, well, Japan seems safe, whatever, so it's working, or people aren't having train accidents. But at the same time, it's like depression is a huge thing in Japan. Suicide's a very big thing in Japan, especially at least compared to other problems that the country has. People getting overworked is a big problem. Part of the reason people don't want to move and they have trouble is not only because Japan doesn't let them come in, but everybody knows like working in Japan sucks. So that also is affecting their economy and stuff like that. So I'm saying looking at one example to try to justify the whole thing is not something that I believe is a great way to argue for consequentialist ethics. And what I will say about why I believe they're like believing intent matters is I believe at the very least from the individual level, if you always focus on being honest and aligning with your intent, then at the very least, regardless of the outcome and action, as an individual, you will be able to live with a clear conscience. And I think if enough people do that on a societal level, given that I don't think people are inherently evil, I think that will lead to better outcomes, because you have self-motivated people doing things that, assuming like people are inherently evil, which I believe is to be true, which you could consider that a belief. Or you could back it in science, saying that a species that has been basically grown and exists for like we're social creatures. We need to survive. We need a group to survive. Therefore, I would believe on average, if you want to go like an evolutionary standpoint, an average person's intent for an average human will be more likely to benefit everybody if based on only their pure intent, because that is literally how the species survives. So maybe that's an evolutionary argument to to arguing that intent on the individual level can and I believe does lead to better consequences overall in the many different factors that any consequences that a decision can come from. Obviously in the US there'll be lots of problems and a bunch of other stuff. So that's a very big topic into why maybe America is not the best example of enforcing, let's say, intent-based actions or giving the freedom for intent as opposed to peer pressuring people into doing what you want them to do. One last thing before we go here. The interview failure study. The interview failure story was funny and interesting. Why do you think people didn't approach you? Because Joey's a foreigner? Did they know that they'll be interviewed about? Maybe if you'd approached them instead, they would have been all Japanesey and too polite to refuse. Haha. That was the other part of your comment. We tried to interview, again, in Osaka, and where people are supposed to be lively and they're fun to talk with or whatever. Nope. It was just as difficult. And we had about 2 hours of waiting outside. We walked up to people. We used multiple signs, actually. We stood back. We let them see the signs. We were holding the signs up. We started directly not shouting at them, but you know what I'm saying? Saying that we're doing interview. We tried so much. And so all I can say is, holy cow, it is difficult to actually get somebody to want to talk.
日本ちょっと考えてみたんだけど、まず一つ目。もしそれがなんかめちゃめちゃ有名な人だったら、インタビューやってますってやつだけで人は来るとは思う。まず一つ目ね。で、二つ目は、なんて言うんだろう。サインがちょっとダメだったんかな。
Yeah, I mean, we were learning from this experience, and we'll see how we can do it better because we know people are able to do it. But let me just say that if we aren't able to do it, there will be a video, and even actually if we are able to get an interview going, there probably will be a video talking about interviewing, the difficulties of interviewing in Japan. Because at this point, I have footage from 3 different failed attempts, so I have to use that footage in some sense. Anyways, yeah, thank you so much for the comments. Everybody have a good Christmas or other holidays, as I said in the first section. Just if you've listened this far, we appreciate it. That bell means we reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us in another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and or just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com. We might respond in the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey, signing off. じゃあねー。